Hi, I'm Rev.Jessie Brandon, and I'm a metaphysical minister as well as a life cycle celebrant. And here on Epiphanies, I get to bring my two loves together, people and books. So today, we're going to be looking at Loving What Is by Byron Katie. She says, in Loving What Is, you have the key, now use it. Sorry, that's Eckhart Tolle that says that about the book. Out of nowhere, like a fresh breeze in a marketplace crowded with advice on what to think and believe, comes Byron Katie and what she calls the work. In the midst of a normal life, Katie became increasingly depressed and desperate. Then one morning, she woke up in a state of absolute joy, filled with the realization of how her own suffering had ended. So with me today to discuss this book is Lori Brant. Thank you, Lori, for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Lori is an ACC life coach. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
ACC life coach, teacher, and she is a mentor and teacher of other life coaches. And her primary focus is on limiting beliefs. I love that, Lori. That's terrific. So please tell me, why did you choose this book?
This book transformed my life. Not just the book, but working further with what she shared in this book. So this is what drew me to Byron Katie is that I was going through some health challenges and I was exploring all the metaphysical principles and wanting to tap into that peace and joy that everyone talks about. But the people that were telling me how to do it didn't really seem to have like a lot of challenges. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but
yes.
They seemed to have, they were famous, they seemed to have lots of money, and everything was coming up roses. And so there was a disconnect. And when I heard about Byron Katie's story, I thought, you know what, if she can do it from where she was and got to where I want to be, then I want to find out how she did that. So that's when I first attempted, I was first exposed to Byron Katie. I read this book, I devoured it, and I went to 2 conferences in Toronto with her. And then I went to California and did the 9-day school of the work. And It's all based on what's covered in this book.
Cool.
And I would say that this has been the most powerful, transformative process for anyone that wants to move to living from their natural state of peace and calm.
Wonderful. Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Now, I've heard of Byron Katie, but I haven't seen more than, the quotes that you see on Facebook. I've heard a little bit about her work. I did read a snippet of a book that made a big impression on me, and it was about, she has people sit in a chair. Now, did she do that at the conference?
Yeah, so she just does this process called the work, and it's just a form of inquiry to question what you're believing. Because ultimately, the only thing keeping everybody from their natural state of peace and calm is what they're believing to be true. Mm-hmm. So if you can question that thought whenever they arise, then you can live from a state of peace and calm regardless of what's going on outside of you. Mm-hmm. And so that's what she does. So she would sit across from someone just like you are today. She would have them fill out what she calls a Judge Your Neighbor worksheet, which is completely covered in the book as well. And all those resources are on her website. You complete the worksheet and then you follow through with the process of inquiry on your responses to that sheet. And so the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet is just a way to unveil some of the limiting beliefs you might be believing. Mm-hmm. But you don't really need a worksheet in my experience. Anytime that I have a negative response, so discomfort, agitation, frustration, sadness, disappointment, anything like that, that's my neon sign telling me I have a limiting belief that's active. And then I can question it right there, let it go, done.
That's beautiful. I know that the piece that I read, what stuck with me was this fellow was struggling with not being enough. And she said to him, just sit in the chair. Just be in the chair. Mm-hmm. Now, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. And he said, I'm sitting in the chair. And she said, you're being. Mm-hmm. And that's the only thing you have to do right now, is be in that chair. And that simple thing is what I've used many times when I find myself starting to, you know, future think, do a list in my head of all the things I should be doing while I'm sitting here talking to someone. And I just have to be.
Yeah. Well, the thing is a lot of the metaphysical books in my experience tell you, you know, just say positive affirmations, just meditate. And, you know, that works when things are going well. But when you are going through a huge challenge, whether it be a divorce or maybe someone passing or an illness, it's completely different, because all those limiting beliefs are all getting triggered all at the same time. And so the eruption inside, the ugly cry, you don't know what the limiting belief is, and you're so triggered, it's hard to grasp on and do anything about it. So yes, I think that when you're sitting in a calm environment and you're exploring the perception of, you know, I am worthy, and finding evidence to support that, you know, it's easy. But when you're in the throes of being triggered and looking for, like, you know, I'm safe, and you've just, you know, lost your house, like, but what I have discovered through her work, and this takes practice, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I practice this every day, and I still do. But what is so, I wouldn't give it up for the world, is that now I have had experiences where I have been in the throes of a huge challenge and can completely stay in that state of peace and calm because I've trained myself to do that. And so what I get so excited about is that we can read about in all those metaphysical books about how, you know, we already are what we're looking for, and you know, you don't need to do anything. Like, now I get it from the space that if we can clean up the limiting beliefs, there's nothing that we are is blocking us from opening ourselves up to the enormous number of alternate perceptions of what's happening. Okay, so if we have a lot of limiting beliefs, we're constantly perceiving our present moment through our past belief system.
Right.
So it's always very narrow because it's always the same. But if we clean that up, then what happens is that we can become completely open to all these alternate perceptions of the present experience.
Right.
So, you know, if I could share an example, would that be okay?
Yeah.
So, for, I was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy, and there was a stage when I was still walking, but, you know, it wasn't so, you know, I wasn't so secure on my feet sometimes. And so I had been practicing this work and questioning my limiting beliefs and finding the gift in the moment. So this one day I was in my kitchen and I fell, and I'm lying there on my back, and I'm thinking, okay, great. What's the gift in this, right? And, you know, but then all of a sudden I realized, okay, I'm not going into the ugly cry. I'm not, oh my gosh, everything happens to me. Why does this happen to me? I shouldn't, you know, why do I have this? Why do I have to do, like, that would have been the past way of responding. So instead, I just recognized that this stuff was working because my first go-to was, where is the gift in this? Now, lying on the floor, it was a little hard to come up with one, I have to admit, and I started laughing, and I started thinking, okay, well, I get to look at my ceiling, which I wouldn't normally do. And I know it's not a big gift, but I'm just looking for, you know.
Yeah.
And then I turned my head and I noticed there was some dirt on the kick plate on my kitchen. I'm like, hey, I wouldn't have noticed that if I didn't fall. So I literally reached in my cupboard and I grabbed a rag and I'm wiping it off and I'm laughing to myself. But underlying this process, what happened there is that I stayed in alignment the whole time. From the time that I fell to the time after I've cleaned up, I stayed in alignment. If I had gone and just followed through with my automatic response of the ugly crying going into the past, I would have come out of alignment and I would have just been triggered and I would have just been in, you know, rehashing old thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
So the idea is I fell, yes, but there were two ways to get up. I could get up through the ugly cry and, you know, feel terrible, and physically it would feel awful, and I would eventually get up some way. It might be days later, but eventually I'd get up. Someone would find me, right? Or I could just fall, stay aligned, be open to the gift, find the gift, and then get up from there.
Yeah.
And so that experience showed me I want to do it the second way all the time because it's way more fun. And I noticed that my body felt good. You know, because when you live life through that veil of limiting beliefs, it's stressful.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel good. And for me, I want to live my best life. And so I want my body to always be in a state of regeneration.
Yes.
So if I can clean up those limiting beliefs and stay in that place of alignment, regardless of what's happening outside of me, then I am optimizing, you know, my body's health, my how I'm feeling, and my ability to keep open to possibilities and alternate perceptions of the present moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I just have to go back and say that for me, all of the self-help stuff merely turned something on. It merely planted seeds. It certainly didn't save my life. The work saved my life, my own work.
Yeah.
But the affirmations and everything was something that kind of kept me at least not falling back into the pit too far, because I'd grab my affirmations and start reading them. But what you're talking about is absolutely where one should be focused and heading for, because, as you say, looking for the gift, you've got to find the gift. I mean, I've told this story before, but I was heading for a speaking engagement, and I hadn't written any notes. I don't do notes. And I was thinking about what I was going to say on the way there, and I realized after a couple of minutes that I was listing all of the things that had happened in my life, but I was listing them as blessings and not the tragedies that I used to list them as. And I started to laugh because I just felt so wonderful about the fact that I had come to that place, and that, yes, indeed, they were blessings. And so for me, that's what I hear you saying, is being able to, I mean, it's so much deeper than this, but being able to find the gift and see things differently, and see things not necessarily as negative, but as positive or heading towards positive.
Yeah, you know, I know some people who might be listening, they're going through a challenge and they're going, yeah, right, find the gift in this, right? And I totally feel that, because there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
Because a limiting belief is really powerful in our experience, because it has evidence to support it, and it's emotionally charged. So for example, I'm not worthy, I think you mentioned earlier, as a limiting belief, or maybe not, but I
I was talking about that fellow.
So I'm not worthy. So there was an experience that instigated that belief, and it had emotions attached to it in that experience, right? And then what happens is that gradually, through life, you continue to build evidence to support I'm not worthy. And each time, it has emotions attached to it. So now I'm not worthy has got all this evidence and all this emotional charge, okay? So when I'm saying I'm looking for the gift, okay, I've got this big mountain of I'm not worthy, and finding the gift would be finding an example of I am worthy. Now, you can even feel when I'm talking about it, this feels way stronger than this, right? So the practice comes in to me building up the evidence of how I'm worthy and connecting to the feeling of that. So this is where positive affirmations can fall short, because if you're just saying them, you got this other little voice saying, no, you're not. Right? Because all this evidence is saying, no, you're not. No, you're not. And what Byron Katie's work does is it gets us to question this so it gets less powerful, and it also builds up this other side of I am worthy, and finding alternate perceptions and finding proof to support it. So then what happens is that eventually you get to here, and then this becomes your go-to rather than this. And then eventually these just don't get triggered as often. I mean, I think a lot of people in the spiritual realm talk about enlightenment like it's this place we're going to get to. That's not my experience. My experience is that I'm either enlightened in the moment or I'm not. So even though I deal with these limiting beliefs, they still, you know, can come up again. But then if you have the tools to question them and transform them right there, then they're done. And, and again, you're constantly building up this other, I call it like a filing cabinet. I feel like I've got the limiting belief filing cabinet that I'm cleaning up, and then I'm creating a new one, which is just these positive, alternate, life-affirming evidence of I already am what I'm looking for. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. I know I just did it to myself the other day. I had a very, very busy weekend and a couple of opportunities that I hadn't explored before. And I could hear a voice in my head muttering. I couldn't hear the words, but I could hear the muttering. And then I did something and I went, oh, I'm such a loser. And I went, no, I'm not. I am not a loser. You know, and I started to list all the things that I have done that, you know, like even just having this TV show, everybody says to me, oh, you've got a TV show. To me, it's just, you know, I get to come and talk to friends, you know? So just the way that I looked at that, I ended up laughing that I would still pull that out of the...
It still comes up.
Pull that out of the bag and try to hit myself with it. And then I no, you don't. You know? So, yeah, it's really a wonderful thing to see those as just the beliefs that you held, that society gave you, that your family gave you, that your environment gave you. Maybe they're not true. And they're likely not, because if they're holding you back, you know, they're not doing you any good.
Well, I honestly believe that our natural state is greatness. And we are constantly looking outside of ourselves to tap into that. But really what we need to do is unlearn what's keeping us from that, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely.
And, you know, this book sent me on my path of inquiry, because I felt the one thing that was missing in the literature was, you're telling me what can be obtained or what we can experience, but how do you get there? Now, you just told me you heard the little mutterings, and somebody else would, well, this is what I do, and this is what I do. And so that has been my passion. Like, let's make this practical, because anyone can meditate for 20 minutes and feel good and be aligned, but can you do it in the middle of a divorce? Or can you do it, you know, when, you know, a relationship breaks up or someone gets a diagnosis? Because that, to me, is how we're supposed to be living. We're supposed to be living from this internal greatness. And from there, we can be open to seeing that life is for us. And but to be able to do that, we've got to have the practical tools to get out of this autopilot, this automatic thinking that we've been we've learned to live by.
Speaking of tools,
yes,
this is your book, The Happiness Toolbox: Finding Happiness Regardless of Circumstances. It says it's easy to be happy when things are going your way, but can you be happy when you're in the middle of a crisis? Absolutely.
Yes.
Tell me about your book.
Well, this came from my journey. So I have to say that I was in a very, very low place. I really just couldn't see why it was worth living. Like, I had no, as someone said, you had no pictures of your future. Because I couldn't see beyond the very limited perception of what it would be like to be in a wheelchair. And, you know, I just had this, I was, had an appointment with a medical intuitive, which I was completely not open to. And I couldn't believe I was going. And she said one thing to me. She said, you know, you have limiting belief patterns, and if you don't clean them up, your children are going to live them. and that was my currency. I was like, okay, I am so don't want this from what I was going through for my children. And that sent me on my path. So I was constantly going to conferences and reading books and doing workshops. And I knew that the limiting beliefs were the key. But I would say, okay, so tell me how to clean them up. Like, okay, if you know, how do I find them? And I would get one and think, okay, I'm done. But and so through my journey and through the health, because the other piece in the spiritual realm circles is that you know, we create our health. Is this, and so there was this real belief that I created the muscular dystrophy, and that I created, and that was my thinking that was at fault, and that I think was, you know, part of why I'm doing what I'm doing, because what I was able to, what I believe to be true now is that my experience is this experience, and it's perfect just the way it is, because it's the experience I'm having. We can't pick and choose what is divine and what's not. My understanding is everything is divine. And that how I perceive this experience is where the healing takes place. Because if I can love myself completely and perceive my experience in its perfection as it is, then I don't need anything else. I don't need a physical healing. I don't need anything outside of me, because I've tapped into that inner greatness. That's all within everyone, right?
I'm so glad.
This was the book that kind of it helps people that maybe are experiencing a health challenge and are also in the spiritual realms and trying to mesh those two together.
And I'm so glad you addressed that, Lori, because I remember a conversation that we had one time about physical healing. And I was all caught up in the blaming myself about why I have the diagnosis I do. And what I was to do with it. And I still have people around me that say, oh, you can heal yourself. Well, be that as it may, you said, but what if this is the experience I'm meant to have? What if this is what I'm supposed to be living, being my best self with this diagnosis? And you helped me so much in that moment, because I realized that I was actually beating myself up because I wasn't spiritual enough to heal myself. And I thought, wait a second, Lori says, what if this is? It gives me
goosies. It really does, because, you know, we are here, we want to talk about, you know, love yourself completely. You can't love yourself completely and say, yeah, but I need to heal. Like, they don't come, that doesn't make sense.
Right.
And to love yourself completely is to love all of you. And to think that, you know, God made a mistake, like, no. Like, this is exactly what I need to go through. And you know what? This experience, you know, people say, find the gift in it. Okay, well, you know what? If I wasn't having this experience, I would never have come to this kind of being, because I would have completely stayed on automatic pilot. Right. Because I could.
So what I want to know is, what do you teach from this book, and what are you doing? I noticed a card in there. I want to hear about that.
Well, as an extension from the book, I find that a lot of people are looking outside of themselves. They're looking for people to heal them. They're looking for people to tell them what to do next. They're looking to people to fix them, or fix their circumstances, or to get more money. And I felt like there's this need to draw people back inside, because that's where the peace and calm is. That's where you can tap into your natural state of greatness, and that is ultimately how everyone's wanting to feel, but they're looking outside of themselves for it. So I created a conference coming up May 3rd to 5th, and it's all about creating activities to get people to practice coming inward while they're busy. So while they may be getting triggered or whatever, so that they can do this in real life. Because to me, that's what it's all about. It's all about living from that natural state.
Absolutely. So how can they get in touch with you? Can I see one of the cards?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's...
All right, so it's Unleash Your Greatness. and it's in Ridgeway, Ontario. And to register, go to www.loribrant.com, and you can find out all the details. It's on the shores of Lake Erie at the Buffalo Canoe Club. 3 days filled with insightful activities, inspiring speakers, and interactive workshops. That sounds absolutely fabulous. I really love that. And I'm so glad that your work has taken you to this place, because I remember when you wrote the book and when it first came out. And didn't you carry a red toolbox?
I do.
Yeah, I thought that was so neat.
Yeah, yeah. And just to add one thing, we do have an amazing keynote speaker. She's coming on the Friday night for this conference.
Yeah.
And she has been on stage in Phoenix International Women's Summit with Cheryl Strayed, Lisa Nichols.
Oh, nice.
So she's dynamic and powerful, and we're really happy to have her.
And who is she?
Oh, sorry, Gina Hatzis. So
Gina
she does the
Hatzis,
Too Much Woman. You might have seen her video. She's gone viral with over 16 million views, I think she's at now. So, yeah.
I'm trying to think. Too Much Woman.
Yeah.
She's not local, is she?
She's in Markham. Yeah.
I've met her.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I actually met her on a Mo Mondays stage that we used to have.
There you go. Dynamic or what?
Yeah, she really is. Yeah.
Yeah, so she's going to be our keynote for Friday night.
Oh,
and,
terrific.
So I think it's going to be an amazing weekend.
So it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
It is.
All right.
So the tickets are only $270 for the 3 days.
That's
it
amazing.
includes all the workshops, materials, and yoga, meditation, and 4 meals.
Wonderful.
Yes.
And is there local accommodation that one can get?
It's kind of like a really unique area. So there is like the Clarion, but there's Shirkston Shores, there's cottages, and it's a real Airbnb kind of vacation resort. So it's a great girls getaway.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, Lori, I can't thank you enough for coming today and to share the information. And I can just see the love and the peace and calm in your eyes.
This is a blast. Thanks, Jessie.
Super.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for joining me here on Epiphanies. I'm Rev.Jessie Brandon. My guest today is Lori Brant, and we've been discussing...
Sorry.
That's okay. We have been discussing loving what is, and boy, that's the truth. Thanks so much. I hope to see you on the next Epiphanies.